Well, these may be known as the dog days of summer other places, but not around here this week. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate you joining us either at our 9 a.m. time slot Sunday morning or 9:30 p.m. time slot on our CW30 sister station or our 10:35 p.m. time slot on ABC24. All types of options for you. Well, first things first, let's get to our topics for today. Another storm, another mass power outage, another major crisis of a utility not being able to meet the basic needs of its customers. What isn't MLGW doing that it should be doing? And is the criticism fair? Also tonight, the Memphis mayor's race, the deadline passes for candidates to file. How does my panel assess the state of the contest right now with just 10 weeks until the election? And in state politics, former President Trump anxious to line up endorsements, but some Mid-South Republicans are happy just sitting on the fence. And why is Tennessee's Republican Attorney General getting much more involved in culturally divisive issues than his predecessors? We're going to get to all that after I introduce my panel. On my far right is ABC24 political analyst Otis Sanford. Former Shelby County GOP Chairman Chris Tudor is here, and Reverend Kenneth Whalen, pastor of New Olivet Worship Center as well. I want to start with the MLGW situation. It seems like every week we have an MLGW situation, and that's not their fault. Mother Nature's really had it in for us so far this late spring and summer. But there has been a lot of criticism, which MLGW has said is somewhat deserved in terms of how far behind they've been on their tree trimming and updating other infrastructure issues. So Otis, I'll start with you. First of all, if you could, just give MLGW a grade on how they've been doing and then elaborate on why you're giving them the grade you're giving them.
Well, I think right now I'm going to be a little kind here, and I'm going to give them a B. And the reason I do that is because, as you just said, you can't control Mother Nature. And the kind of storms we have had have been unprecedented, the number of them, back to back to back. And they are doing their best to deal with the situation. The problems that MLGW has had are long-standing problems that Doug McGowan talked about. We are so far behind on tree trimming. Obviously, the infrastructure problems were never dealt with under previous presidents and CEOs. So I think they're doing the best they possibly can. I give them a B. Okay. Chris, how about you?
I agree with that analysis, totally. It was shocking to me to find out that MLGW has not met their tree trimming objectives, I think, since the early 90s. But they've got new leadership. I think Doug McGowan has a reputation, a well-deserved reputation in this community for being a very, very competent technocrat administrator. I think he's going to get it done. I think they've got $1.2 billion in the bank to get the tree trimming done. And I think that, like you mentioned, Richard, they've sort of admitted and fessed up and given their assessment of the situation. I think they estimated that maybe we're seeing 5 times the amount of outages that we would otherwise see if they didn't have all this deferred maintenance on tree trimming. So it sounds like they understand the problem. It sounds like they have accepted a responsibility. It sounds like they have the resources and the commitment to get it done, and we'll just have to see and hold them accountable.
Reverend Whalen?
I give them an I for incomplete. No, seriously.
Incomplete.
I give them an I for incomplete because 2 things. First of all, the test is not over. To Otis's point, these are unprecedented weather events. I stopped calling them storms. These are weather events that really boggle the mind in terms of the extent and the damages that are done. But I think 2 things can be true. We can be having unprecedented storms, and MLGW can be doing a sort of poor job in responding and reacting. I've asked a question, how did Doug get the job? How did Mr. McGowan get that job with no experience in utility administration? How did that happen? And if he had utility experience, would their reaction be different? I think those are fair questions.
Okay.
Well, I mean, they probably are fair questions, but sometimes having somebody who just knows what a line looks like or other kind of electricity terms or water terms may not be the person you want running and leading. You need an administrator sometimes, somebody who is able from a technocrat point of view to get things done. The last person we had in that job, J.T. Young, had tons of utility experience, and what did we get out of it? Not a whole lot. And he left here, and you have to put a lot of the burden on him for...
Oh, no. We don't have J.T. Young kick around anymore.
Well, I know, but he left. And what did he leave? He left the job undone. That he got an eye because he didn't do a complete job with the tree trimming and anything else related to it while he was here.
I don't disagree with that, except to say that a person who has experience in any area will at least know who to ask inside the technocrat administration. That's all I say. I don't disagree with what you're saying.
Let me ask you this. You know, we all do a fair amount of traveling. I don't know of another city with as many trees as Memphis has, with so many above ground power lines. And to me, the two just are, you're going to have exactly what we have. And that's a lot of trees that fall on power lines and leave power out for a lot of people. We've raised this issue before. Is it time to invest in putting more of the lines underground, which we've been told will cost billions of dollars? City can't afford that, but can we float a bond issue or something like that to once and for all take care of this? Because we sure do spend an awful lot of money in these repairs after these storms. What do you guys think?
What do you think?
It's a complicated situation, and I'm by no means an expert, but my very limited reading suggests that that's actually not a cure-all. Maybe it helps a little bit, but you run into other issues when you bury these lines. You know, what happens when everything floods? What happens when you have to get in and do maintenance? It's not a cure-all, unfortunately. And I think also in MLGW's defense, this is not a typical private utility that can just immediately pass costs along to the customer in order to get capital for capital expenditures, right? They have to get approval from the Memphis City Council to raise rates. So I think that's been part of the problem historically, is that they say, look, we have all this deferred maintenance, we don't have any money to do it, we'd like to raise rates. And then understandably, the politicians say, and I get it, right? It falls, the burden of a utility increase falls very heavily on the poor. It's very regressive. So you have people in the city council say, nobody can afford a utility increase. So it's a complicated situation. But like I said before, I think that they now have the money to do it.
They just got to keep it up,
Just did they
too,
have the
once-
time?
and
Yeah,
then-
I mean,
well,
we're
yeah.
having one of these storms every couple of weeks, it seems.
Yeah, if Mother Nature would allow it to happen, they could get caught up, perhaps. All right, we're going to leave it there. We're going to talk about the Memphis mayor's race, all the new developments with that, when we come back right here on ABC24 This Week.